So we have the pleasure of welcoming Ben today to our interview series, Leaders Hum. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick intro of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work with AI and automation technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. And now for our guest, Ben Eubanks is the founder of Upstart HR and works as a principal analyst. He is well known for his blogs on Upstart HR, which has over 1 million readers. He is a passionate HR enthusiast, author of the book AI in HR, who has made his mark with keynote addresses, blogs, podcasts, and whatnot. The co-founder of HR Revolution Movement, Ben Eubanks is here to share with our viewers insights from his very own experiences. As someone who has tried his hands on all aspects of HR, we're extremely happy to invite Ben Eubanks to our interview series, Leaders Hum. Welcome, Ben. We're thrilled to have you.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. Ben, let me start with the first question. If you could quickly tell us a little about Upstart HR, we'd like to know more about your journey that actually brought you into it.
Okay, absolutely. So Upstart HR is a community that I've been running for, over 10 years now. Seems like it was just yesterday that I started writing the first piece there, but it was started because when I was getting into HR all those years ago, I just got my degree and I thought, I know what I need to know to be successful in this job. And the more I started to read and learn, the more I realized that I had no clue what I was doing. In my first HR job, I actually started writing about the things I was learning, sharing those with the broader world, trying to help everyone coming after me to understand some of those things. And so I wrote a lot of things that were kind of career-oriented, things around how to get certified, things like that. And it's evolved over time because as my career has evolved, the kind of things that I'm interested in, the things that I focus on have changed. And so it's been fun to see that evolution over time. But the website itself has helped more than 1 million people, which is astounding to think, answer their questions, figure out their career directions, things like that as they're trying to get an HR. And so it is one of the things I'm most thankful for and proud of in the time that I've spent working in and around this space.
Wow, that is amazing. And, now that you're kind of working into such a people-centric, field, do you believe in the trend of organizations moving from business centricity to employee centricity and people centricity? And does your research point to confirmations in this trend?
Absolutely. So it's always fun because Upstart HR is kind of the side thing that I do. It's been like the little side gig that I've always maintained for all the career as I've had different roles, different jobs. And today I actually run a research firm called Lighthouse Research. And so we do research in different areas of human capital management to understand what employers are thinking. We also focus on the technologies to really figure out what capabilities each system has, what employers can get from them, which ones are doing what they say they're doing, things like that. So it's fun to see those two perspectives, both the tech side and the people side, because there are times where they start to overlap a little bit. And one of the areas is this focus on employee experience and candidate experience and trying to blend those things together and make that a priority. And I definitely agree with you. That is a big trend we've seen in the last few years. For example, the Business Roundtable, which is a roundtable made up of CEOs from these large corporations, last year changed their mission statement from "we are about profit" to "we are about our community, our people, and supporting our stakeholders." And that stakeholder can be, wherever they operate, that community, that the people around that. It could be the employees, it could be someone else, but it's not just about profit and shareholder value. They're looking at ways to impact those other stakeholders and support them in some way. And so again, we see that in the technologies that we look at Lighthouse. I talk to between 300 and 400 providers a year and understand what they're doing, how they're supporting people, and the focus on creating experiences around employees that make them excited, that make them engaged, that make them want to bring their best to work. That is a big shift that we've seen in thinking over the last few years, and it really mirrors the bigger focus on the marketing and sales side to focus on the customer experience. Right? There are some companies we think of naturally, they treat their customers really well, and those companies have realized, wait a minute, if we treat our customers well, we should be treating our people just as well, because it leads to those same positive benefits, the positive outcomes. And so it's been fun to watch that evolution over time and to continue seeing new companies kind of realize the value of focusing on that experience and diving into both B.
Mhm. Right, but what do you think has prompted this change? Because this wasn't there decades back. What has suddenly become, so important for people, and why is there such a sudden shift into people centricity?
I think part of it, again, it's tied back to this idea that over the last maybe 10, 15 years, we've seen the shift from it's about marketing and selling and just pushing a product at someone to how can we create a customer journey or customer experience that really shows them we value them, whether they buy our product or service or not. Let's treat them as well as we can through the process and help them to feel better about themselves, better about their decisions, better about their life. I think that same sort of thinking bleeds over into how we treat our people, how we treat our candidates. Now let's focus on the candidate experience was kind of the first part of this, and then the employee experience came after that. But the candidate experience is about let's treat those candidates as well as we can, because wait a minute, they might also want to apply for another future job with us. If they don't get a role right now, they might be the second best candidate. But if we don't treat them well, they're never going to come back. There's actually a really amazing case study from Virgin Media. They're a retail, they sell cell phones, mobile phones, and things like that. And they realized that they were treating their candidates so poorly, they weren't communicating well, that it was costing them millions of dollars every year, because those candidates said, this was such a bad experience in the hiring process that I will never shop at this organization again. And so the company said, we've got to fix this. We've got to solve this problem. And they revamped their process. They improved their communications. They treated those silver medalists, the ones that were not the number one candidate, but the person who just had one thing that disqualified them from being the best person on the hiring slate. You'd want to hire those people again in the future. So they started treating them really well, really carefully, over-communicating with them to make sure they felt in the loop about decisions, so that even after those people said, I did not get a job there, I went through this extensive hiring process, I didn't get a job, but I still feel good enough about that company, I'd shop there, and I would recommend friends and family to go and shop there. And now they credit that change in their hiring process with a $7 million revenue increase for the company. So that's an example of why this isn't just a nice to have, a thing that, well, if you treat people nicely, that's a good thing, but you don't have to. There's real tangible value, especially for companies that have a lot of customer facing type positions, that creates more opportunities for them to do that well.
Absolutely. And especially now with the outbreak of the coronavirus, how do you think this scenario is going to change? And is it going to change the way we recruit, the way the workplace is? Will there be some kind of emotional outbreak as well in workplaces? How do you think it's going to all change?
So one of the things that's come to mind in the last few watching the evolution sort of happen, initially it was, oh no, everybody's remote. What do we do? How do we survive this? Just getting people remote, making sure they have the tools, the technology, the support to be able to do that. And then now that it's starting to settle into some semblance of normalcy here in the States, people are thinking differently, like, okay, now I'm working, but I'm also quarantined. And so you said the emotional piece, and I think that's a very real part of the conversation. So the idea that I've had in the last few days is I'm thinking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we look at the different needs people have as humans, not just as workers, but as humans, and whether those levels are being satisfied. At the most basic levels, it's am I safe? Do I have food? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I healthy? Those sort of basic things. And what's interesting is before all this happened, if someone walked into the office at work, we assumed that they were healthy, that they were fed, that their children were safe and healthy. We made assumptions about them when they just showed up in the office, but we can't make those assumptions anymore because we don't know. And this is going to kind of shake up that way we think about things. So for the companies now, they're thinking, oh my goodness, like my hair's on fire. This is a crisis. How do I get through this? We will get through this, absolutely. But my hope is on the backside, after all this is done, on the other end of this, when things have kind of settled back into some semblance of normalcy, that we don't lose that flexibility, that grace that we're extending to each other right now when we're having to deal with children running around because they're not in schools, like those things that right now seem like chaos and craziness. That I'm hoping that we continue to extend grace to people even beyond when things get back to normal, because we realize that at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We all have a family, and we can't assume that someone showing up at work cuts all those ties and leaves those behind and forgets about all that and just focuses on their job.
Absolutely. I think right now when we're in this situation and we're working remotely and we're kind of, we're having home into our workplaces. So you're in a very personal space, but then you are also working. So it's like it's a very different experience for leaders, especially for employees as well, because we've never been in such a unique situation before, and that changes a lot of equations. And typically, even with tech, right? The way we're using tech, the way we used it in the workplace is very different from the way we use it while working from home. So what is that, tech aspect that you're changing? How has that changed?
So it's been interesting to watch the technology side of this conversation because, again, we try to cover the vendor landscape to the degree we can. There's so many out there. But one of the things that we've seen is there are a lot of them that are saying, hey, right now we're going to just provide information. We're going to provide support. We're going to try to help people as they're going through this because they realize that this is not something that's happening if you just sit back and watch passively and hope that it's eventually going to recover and things will come back. What's been fun for me is to watch all of these people, all these companies come in, whether they're a technology company or just a consumer, private company or public company that wants to just help. I was reading this morning about these different firms that are, again, not in the HR technology space, but companies like Nestle, they're offering logistics support to the Red Cross to help them get supplies they need to get. GM has cut worker pay, has cut some of their executive salaries, their board compensation, things like that, so that people are able to survive. People are able to sustain themselves on whatever income they can continue to pay them while they're not working, if they're not able to go to the jobs. Other companies are paying people hazard pay that still have to do frontline work and retail sort of organizations, things like that. They're paying them hazard pay right now because it is more dangerous for them. So that's been neat to see all of these companies, whether they're in the HR technology world that are supporting employers in their respective ways or outside of that. Again, they're focusing on that human aspect. Like, how can we help? We all have something to pitch in. We all have something we can do. Last week, my own company, Upstart HR, I said, you know what? There are a lot of people I was seeing, HR friends and contacts that were saying, hey, I just got laid off. This is a surprise, right? I got fired. My job's gone. What do I do now? And so I kept seeing those. I thought, what can we do to help? And so we put out a note saying, okay, we're going to give away $1,000 worth of study materials for people that want to prepare for the HR certification exam. And then after a few hours, that was gone. So we said, okay, $2,000. And a few hours later, that was gone. I said, okay, $3,000, right? Kept trying to do this. And there was even more demand than we could meet in that sort of circumstance. So everybody I would challenge to think about right now how they can help others, how they can support others. What thing do you have? Maybe it's a skill that you can offer, whatever it is, to try to make the world a better place. Because we've seen all the kind of negative things, being rude and aggressive right now. There's no need for that. We're all in this together, and if we can bring out those better qualities, we'll all look back on this with a different kind of perspective, I think.
Right. I think a lot of people are also talking about being in this together and actually fighting this and coming out of this as, strong people. And this will only make us stronger, the next time that we face this, hopefully not. But if we do, then I think we will be better ready for whatever it is. And you're right, it's the Maslow's hierarchy. If you see the stages of it, we've conquered the first few stages of it already. Now it's about self-esteem and self-actualization, and this is the kind of time that you can actually do that and look at everything in perspective and actually come out with solutions and help people and really connect with each other on a very different personal level, and that makes a lot of sense. And talking about laying off, right? There are a lot of layoffs happening. So how do you think this makes a wave in an HR person's life? I know you talk a lot about measuring results rather than anything else and going by measurable results. So how do we kind of cope with this? The laying off part of it, the human experience part of it, plus the results that we get out of this.
The hardest part, I think, for a lot of people is not knowing how long this is going to last, and the extent to which it's going to impact things, like the ripple effect. Right now we're seeing the early sort of impacts of this, but who knows how long that's going to continue and what that's going to look like when it's all said and done. There are some industries that are really hurting, and other ones are actually doing really well. They're expanding, they're hiring more people, they're trying to meet demand. So it's been really intriguing to kind of watch that shift and that evolution. I have no idea what it's going to mean long term. If the world's economy slows down in general, then that won't be the first time that's happened, and we'll all, again, we're in it together. We'll come back from it together. We'll make this work. If things rebound quickly and we're able to get back to work, and people there aren't any long lasting effects to most of the businesses in the industries, then people will look back on that like that was a weird kind of nightmare, surreal moment. But we're able to get back to this, and again, not just get back to how we were always doing things, but I think there will be some lasting changes. I've heard from some people that said, hey, now that I'm working from home, I'm more productive than I ever was before. I feel connected to my team because I'm actually intentional about connecting with the right people, not just having occasional chats with the person sitting in the next cube over. And I'm going to ask my boss if I can stay home for now. Even if we go back to work, I want to stay home and continue this. And it's been weird because over the years, there have been leaders who said, no one's working from home because if I can't see you, I can't prove you're working. And now they don't have that option. Now they are forced into this situation where they have to be more trusting of their people. They need to create more transparency to help them understand what's going on when they're not around, and more communication. So it's forced some things in a positive way as well. And there's plenty of negative aspects, negative effects, but there's some positive aspects. I'm hoping that those continue, again, long after this is over.
Absolutely. And I think, working remotely has, it's kind of put out a lot of challenges for, team managers and employees, and how to bridge that gap. And there are technological issues. So what are you hearing from people around you? What are the, challenges that people are facing, and how are they trying to actually cope with that? I think that would be very helpful to our viewers as well.
So there's a couple levels of coping. One side of it is kind of the work side of things. And right now, because most of us are working from home, those are kind of intertwined. But the work side of it, if it's an HR leader, a talent leader, it's how can I make sure I'm communicating what's happening about people? Can we pay our people? Can we make sure their benefits continue? If we can't keep our people because we have no opportunity to do that, how can we be as gracious and kind and supportive of them as we possibly can, as we're helping them to find another role or helping them to find another opportunity? I saw an HR leader last week post online. She said, I have 10 people on my team. They are all going to be let go next week, and I've already found jobs for 5 of them. I'm trying to find more. Who wants to hire these phenomenal people, right? And so we'll see those kinds of things happening. On the human side, though, you mentioned it as well. Like we're moving up those levels of the hierarchy of needs on a human level. And so once someone is safe, once someone has enough toilet paper in their house, right? Once they have the food they need to survive, they're going to start moving up those levels steadily. Am I safe and secure? Do I have job security? Do I have, is my company communicating enough to me so I understand what's going to happen long term? Do I feel like I'm connected to what's happening? Do I feel, normally we call it, belonging, inclusion, diversity, equity, like those sort of conversations. But I think those sorts of things, we're going to have to think about that, casting that net broader. Like, does everyone in our company feel like they are included in what's happening? Do they feel like they're connected to what's happening? Like they have a role to play, a part to play, and that we value that specific part that they're going to play? I believe that this isolation, everyone being disconnected, is going to be a challenge because there will be long-lasting effects of that. Some people are very social and they need that personal interaction with people, and they're going to have challenges on a personal level, an emotional level, because they're not able to connect with people. So that's one of the other pieces of advice I've been giving a lot lately is, those friends that you're like, we should catch up sometime, and then you never quite get around to it. In the last 2 weeks, I've had 2 calls a day with those kinds of people that I'm like, we haven't talked in over a year or even longer than that, and just kind of catching back up on each other, what's happening, anything I can do to support you. And even if it's just a 30-minute chat with someone that you haven't seen in a long time, that helps you feel more connected and helps you feel more stable as a human. And that's been very valuable for me. And so I've been recommending it to others because it's one of those things right now, you might not have time to do other things. You can't obviously go out and do anything, but that is a great way to spend some of that time that you have and make the world a better place for that other person too. Make them smile, give them something good to think about.
Right. Ultimately, it's about the human experience. And if we can, just shed some kindness, which is just free of cost, I think that'll go a long, long way. And then once we come out of the crisis, it'll just be about gratitude, and you will be thankful and count your blessings. And, it really, really helps when you kind of talk to others, and especially people who are introverts, right, who cannot express too much. It's a great way to kind of just talk to them over tech or just communicate on social media, right? And that makes a lot of sense. What do you also think? So, the future of the workforce is going to be a lot about millennials, right? 75% and more. So do you believe in millennials, and do you believe in the whole, gig economy, all that jargon around it? Do you believe in all of that?
So in general, yes, there will be certain groups, certain demographics that come through, right? We want to label millennials, we want to label them Z, right? But the truth is there's a big chunk of the workforce that is relatively young, relatively inexperienced compared to the other end. The Xers are a smaller batch, and the boomers are a bigger one. They're retiring in big waves every single day. Again, I don't know right now how that's going to affect that, if they're going to be leaving or if they're going to be holding on to their jobs for longer if they can, to try to maintain some stability if their retirement savings hit a snag with everything going on in the economy right now, because that's been one of the biggest reasons people stay in the workplace, is because they're trying to save up and make sure they're financially stable so that they can retire. And so this is probably going to prolong for some of those people the time until they can retire, impacting that financial piece of it. But I do believe, again, there's a couple different facets to the conversation, but I definitely am interested to watch what happens with this gig worker kind of economy. What's been interesting to see is for a long time, that group has been kind of ignored from a legislative standpoint, from a government standpoint. And here in the States, again, we saw this announcement. Some of the recent laws that were passed actually provides protections and support for those individuals that are, an independent contractor or someone who's doing freelance work, things like that. They're actually getting some support from some of these things. So I'm curious to see if that will sort of legitimatize the idea that these are real people, these are real jobs, even if they're not working for some other company, and we'll give them some more rights long term. It'll be interesting to watch that piece of it and see what happens.
Right. And, talking about the future, so also talking about, tech, you are an author of the book, which is AI and HR. So how important of a role will technology and digital make in the inclusive workplace of the future? Or if you could tell us more about your concept of AI making the workplace more human as such.
Okay. Yeah. And that sounds like a paradox, right? How can we use technology to make the experience at work more human? But it absolutely can. So a couple of things I'll talk about. You mentioned inclusive there, and that's one of the important pieces. Technology can make work more inclusive because it doesn't care who you are. It doesn't care if you're a man or a woman, or if you're LGBTQ, or if you are a different color. It does not care. It has no way to process that. That's also a downside in some ways, because it can't help, but it just doesn't care. So let me give you a couple of examples of how that actually applies, how this AI piece applies in the real world. So when I think back to my time working in HR, the things that added value and the things that I really appreciated were very high touch. Being able to coach leaders, because coaching that leader doesn't just make work better for that one person, but for their entire team, if I can help them to be better at their job. Maybe it's engaging with candidates in the hiring process and really helping them to understand the culture, so they feel like if the company is a fit for them or not, and really working with them, not reviewing resumes, not scheduling interviews. Like, those things don't excite anybody, I don't think. Those high touch kinds of HR are valuable, but they're also not scalable, because they're high touch. You don't have unlimited time to just talk to candidates all day long, or you don't have unlimited time just to work with your leaders to help them be better leaders. And so AI can help us to scale some of those things that are not as valuable in the day-to-day, whether it's scheduling interviews, doing those kind of things, or if it's giving, capturing employee feedback and being able to analyze that for sentiment and how they feel and what their mood is and report that back so you can take action on it. The tools allow us to see people at a very nuanced level, at a personal level, at a human level, that we can't when we're looking at the data. We're looking at a sea of resumes, things like that. We can't see those things, but AI can help us to see through that because it has better analytical capabilities than humans do. And I'll tell you a quick funny story that kind of reinforced this concept that there is an impact here. So I was researching the book. I started reading and learning more about chatbots and how chatbots are used in the candidate process, so they can interact with a candidate, they can take a resume, they can schedule an interview, doing those basic things via a chatbot. And I'm a little bit of a skeptic sometimes. So I was like, I wonder if that really is something that candidates actually appreciate, right? They're doing this chat thing versus just submitting on a website. Do they like that? And one of the candidates I talked to said that at the end of the process, this is a bot, it's not a person. At the end of that application process, 75% of the candidates said thank you to the chatbot at the end of that transaction. And I realized at that moment that this feels fundamentally different. It's hard to put a price tag or a value on how it feels, how it makes someone feel, but there's a real impact there. A lot of the candidates I talked to, the last time I had to submit a job online, I wanted to throw my computer out the window. I didn't want to say thank you, and so that creates a different layer of experience. There's examples like that all over HR, talent, learning, and recruiting that show AI can create those better experiences and create a more human interaction for those people. And that's what really excites me about the future of that technology as it continues to be embedded more heavily into the HR function overall.
Wow, that's actually quite insightful how AI can, is helping people, and all of us are having, some or the other element of tech and AI that we're interacting with on a daily basis. And being inclusive of tech in our workplaces will also be, really important going forward. And I completely agree with you. Also, what is your opinion about the latest trends with respect to, human capital management platforms that will redefine the HR space? Is there a refresh cycle upon us since the current major ones are now being looked at as legacy?
So I love seeing this pendulum swing back and forth over time. And there are, as you call them, legacy providers. They've been around for a long time. They're big, and they're often kind of slow to move. They're very complex, and for complex use cases and organizations. But for companies that don't need that level of complexity, there are a lot of amazing tools as well in the marketplace that are able to be agile and to meet the demands of a fast-moving company and to help companies as they're scaling up and growing. And it's fun to watch that pendulum kind of shift, because those companies that are legacy, I do see some really intriguing and amazing innovations come out of them because they have a lot of data on hand, right? Go back to the AI conversation, AI, machine learning, those are powered by data. So those bigger companies have more of that information and can build tools to support that. But at the same time, I see these small, nimble firms that are focusing on one area of talent, or that are able to support customers in a very agile way. And it's so much fun for me, because just when I think I've seen the coolest thing there is out there, the most amazing piece of technology, I have a call with someone else, a new company, and I learn about what they're doing, and I'm like, okay, well, I got to reset that clock in my head on what is modern, what is available in the marketplace, because someone else is pushing those boundaries every single day. And that's one of the most fun parts of my job, is staying on top of that. So when employers reach out to me and they're saying, hey, we're looking for piece of technology, who does what are the capabilities, I'm able to give them that full view, that full perspective of who's doing innovative things in the marketplace, and help them really understand that so they can make the right choice themselves. It's so much fun. In general, right, it's the tools we're using in our personal lives, right, the mobile devices we have, those things, our children can operate those. But if I put someone in front of an enterprise HR system and ask them to hire an employee, update someone's benefits, assign someone a training class, they might not be able to do those things. And so, again, I agree with you that they need to be more intuitive. The UI needs to be more focused, needs to be more tailored, so that it is as simple as the apps, the tools that we're using in our personal lives to, call a car to come pick us up, or to navigate to some new place, or to find a restaurant we would like to eat at. Any of those kinds of things, it should be that easy when we're using our HR software.
Absolutely. And, now that the workforce is kind of moving towards millennials are not tolerant of something that takes so much time, right? They're just like everything on their fingertips and they want it quick. So, we've got to kind of craft our, platforms in that manner where we do not waste a lot of time in, just kind of drifting away and making things more complex, right? So,
I was going to say, I talked to a friend yesterday. He heads talent and learning for a large university here in the U.S., and they're about to implement a system. And he said, it's amazing that as I was talking to them, there are things that the system should be able to do that are very simple and basic that you can't do. That that they didn't even think about that when they were developing it. And that's the thing. Like, you've got to be developing this, as you said, with the end user in mind. You've got to be focusing on the person that is going to be using this day to day, not someone that's far removed from the actual work and is going to be just the administrator. There are people every day that need to use this to get their work done logistically, and it's got to support those individuals, or it's not going to be sticky. It's not going to add value, and people are not going to use the software, even though you might have spent money on it. And so you've got to definitely be designing and focusing and supporting those people that are going to be using it every single day.
Absolutely. It's not about the buyer anymore. It's about the end user, people who will actually use the tool. So what is there inside, right? So, lastly, any other important sound bites that you would like to leave for our viewers?
Okay. Can I give a really quick story, if you don't mind?
Yeah, of course. Love stories.
Okay. So one of the admonitions, one of the things that I believe that I always communicate to HR leaders is that we have to be data-driven, but people-focused. Okay, they're sometimes pulling at each other, because to be data-driven and to be focused is to be building the business case and supporting that and to be partnered with the business. But on the other side it's about what we talked about today, caring about the human and focusing on the things they need and supporting the people that make up our workforce. And the story that I love to illustrate this, a couple years ago, 5 years ago, my wife and I were headed to the hospital. She was about to give birth for the first time, and she was freaked out. I was freaked out. It was everything you can imagine, right? We've seen all the movies, someone driving 100 miles an hour trying to get to the hospital. So we get there, and they get her all settled and everything else, and they're putting these monitors on her, and I see one where they strap this device on her stomach. And I said, what is that? And they said, well, it's a tocometer. It actually measures the strength of the contractions that she's going through. I'm like, wow, that's really neat. I'm a science nut. I love data, everything else. I'm over there watching this little readout, the line on the screen, and behind me, I hear my wife say, "Ooh, that was a rough one." I'm like, well, I'm looking here at the screen, and it actually didn't look like it was that bad. It was, I tell that story, right, and tell on myself, because it's my reminder personally, and it's my own penance, I guess, that behind every number, every metric, every chart that we're looking at, there are people, there are lives, there are humans, there are dreams, there are families. And so we've got to focus not just on being data-driven and being so focused on the evidence and everything else. That does matter, and that's important. We also have to focus on the people at the end of the day, or we're not doing the full part of our job we should be doing.
Wow, that is a very powerful message. So you can be data-driven, but you should never forget, who's behind the data. It's really the humans that you're, kind of interacting with. Amazing. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much for that explanation. And I've had a complete pleasure talking to you, Ben. And, I hope you had a good time too.
It's been so much fun. Again, like you, I love a good story. I love telling stories and making this stuff practical for employers and helping them understand what to do next. And especially right now, in the midst of everything, you said we're all in this together, even though we're not physically together, we're all in this together. And so right now I've been trying to share any message, any positivity, anything in that sort of vein to really help people feel like we are in control of the controllables, and we can support our people and love our people, even if they're not sitting next to us day to day. So this has been a great opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I think our viewers are really going to, benefit from what you've said. And thank you so much for taking out your time today, Ben. I've had a complete pleasure. It's been a very enriching experience for me. And you stay safe, stay well, and I will stay in touch with you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye, Ben. Have a good day.